If humans lost the ability to lie, why government would collapse first? 20 June 2025. If humans suddenly and universally lost the ability to lie, if every act of intentional deception, omission, or misrepresentation vanished overnight, the first and most immediate collapse would not occur in advertising, public relations, or corporate sales, but in government itself. Politics, both domestic and international, would implode in a moment of unprecedented candor. Not because governance is uniquely corrupt, but because the machinery of statecraft, across every system and ideology, is fundamentally built on managing truth. Without lies, states would not merely falter, many would cease to function altogether. The central role of deception in politics. Governments lie as a matter of routine. Politicians lie to get elected, to maintain legitimacy, to conceal weakness, and to maneuver through crises. Lying is not incidental to politics. It is intrinsic. Electoral campaigns are full of grand promises, deliberately vague positions, and emotional appeals that stretch or selectively present truth. If politicians suddenly lost the capacity to lie, the very nature of elections would change overnight. Candidates could no longer make aspirational pledges without absolute certainty of fulfillment. No more, we'll cut taxes without reducing services, or our economic plan will deliver growth for all. Only verifiable, unexaggerated truth would be permitted. This radical honesty would render most political platforms unelectable. Voters are not always motivated by facts. They respond to visions, feelings, and narratives. Without the rhetorical leeway to shape perception, politicians would struggle to build appeal. A truth-only politics would likely alienate the electorate, undermine party platforms, and result in voter apathy or disillusionment. The democratic process would grind to a halt, not for lack of engagement, but for lack of palatable choices. Legislative gridlock and policy paralysis. In legislatures, politics depends on compromise, negotiation, and strategic ambiguity. Parties build coalitions through unspoken understandings, vague commitments, and carefully worded declarations that allow multiple interpretations. In a world without lies, backroom deals would become impossible. Every motive, ambition, and reservation would be visible to all. Political adversaries could no longer bluff or posture. Their intentions would be clear, stripping them of leverage. This transparency, while seemingly noble, would make negotiation exceedingly difficult. Policy formation often requires half promises and informal alliances that cannot withstand the scrutiny of total honesty. The result would be legislative paralysis, where nothing could be agreed upon because everything must be explicitly stated and fully disclosed. The collapse of public messaging. Governments depend on controlling public perception. They release data selectively, manage the news cycle, and use rhetoric to shape public sentiment during crises. In a no-lies world, officials would have to speak only what is strictly true, with no embellishment or omission. We underestimated the threat. Our policy caused widespread harm. We knew the risks, but proceeded anyway. Such admissions, while refreshingly honest, would erode public trust rather than build it. Citizens may not want to be lied to, but they are rarely comforted by brutal candor. Without the ability to smooth over complex or painful truths, governments would struggle to maintain order. Fear, confusion, and outrage would rise unchecked. Political leaders would become scapegoats not only for their mistakes, but for their honesty about them. Ironically, a world without political lies would be one in which leaders are punished for telling the truth. The death of diplomacy. Nowhere would the absence of lying be more catastrophic than in international relations. Diplomacy is predicated on concealment, misdirection, and carefully managed ambiguity. Nations lie to adversaries, allies, and their own citizens to protect strategic interests. Treaties, arms negotiations, peace talks all depend on partial disclosure and mutual pretense. Imagine a world where diplomats must speak only the full truth. We have no intention of honoring this agreement. Our support for your government is contingent on access to your natural resources. We are arming rebel groups across your border. Such candor would not preserve peace. It would ignite war. Diplomatic language, built on euphemism and subtext, would be impossible. Bluffing, a key mechanism of deterrence, would vanish, removing a central pillar of nuclear stability. Without the lie, there is no deterrent. Without the deterrent, there is no peace. Authoritarian regimes and the illusion of strength. Autocratic governments would collapse even faster. These regimes rely on propaganda, falsified statistics, staged elections, and grandiose myths to preserve the illusion of power. If leaders could no longer fabricate popularity, suppress facts, or distort outcomes, their control would evaporate. Fear and violence might sustain obedience for a time, but not legitimacy. Truth would expose the hollowness of the state. Revolt would follow. The paradox is striking. The more authoritarian the regime, the more reliant it is on lies, and the less it can function in a world without them. Philosophical implications. Truth versus governance. The collapse of governance in a truth-only world is not merely a practical problem. It is a philosophical reckoning. Thinkers from Machiavelli to Arendt have warned that politics and truth coexist uneasily. Hannah Arendt, in Truth and Politics, argued that political power is threatened by the despotic character of truth, which cannot be debated or reshaped. Politics deals in negotiation and possibility. Truth deals in certainty and finality. When these clash, politics defends itself with falsehoods. Niccolò Machiavelli, in The Prince, openly acknowledged that deception is essential for maintaining power. A ruler must learn to be not good when necessary. In this view, lying is not an aberration, it is a skill of leadership. Without it, governance becomes a suicide mission. Even moral philosophers like Cicely Bach and John Stuart Mill recognize that lying, though often harmful, can sometimes serve higher ethical purposes. Bach cautioned against the wholesale condemnation of lies, pointing to their role in preserving relationships, easing conflict, and even saving lives. In this framework, the total absence of lying is not moral progress, it is moral rigidity. The ethical paradox of radical honesty. One might assume that a lie-free world would be more just, more moral, more civilized. But the reality could be far darker. Without the buffer of selective speech, human relationships would fracture. Without the flexibility of diplomatic fictions, war could become more frequent. Without the capacity to shield the public from brutal truths, panic could replace informed consent. Truth, while virtuous, is not always kind. Candor, while ethical, is not always strategic. In governance, a lie is sometimes the price paid for stability, diplomacy, and peace. Remove the lie, and the foundation cracks. Could any government survive? Perhaps only radically localized participatory systems might endure, a kind of hyper-transparent technocracy or citizen assembly model where facts are laid bare and decisions are made collectively. But these are theoretical constructs, not current systems. The states we have today, liberal democracies, authoritarian regimes, international alliances, are all predicated on degrees of untruth. They are, in effect, built to fail without it. The initial collapse of government would also cascade across all other systems. Economic markets would lose faith in policy signals. Military alliances would crumble. Civic institutions would flounder without leadership. What begins as a moral reordering becomes a structural annihilation. Conclusion. The scaffolding of civilization. If humans lost the ability to lie, governments would fall first and hardest, not because they are evil, but because they are human. The lie is not merely a flaw in the system, it is part of the scaffolding. Without it, governance, both domestic and global, loses its instruments of persuasion, its tools of stability, and its means of survival. In removing the lie, we might find truth. But in finding truth, we would uncover a terrifying fragility, that the world we have built rests not on candor, but on carefully managed illusion. And once that illusion is stripped away, it is not truth that remains, but chaos. A heartfelt light. To every soul whose hand did give, you've helped me dream, helped me live. In darkest hours your light came through, with hearts so kind, so pure, so true. Your gifts, like stars in deepest night, have steered me gently toward the light. Each coin, each word, each silent prayer, a thread of hope so rich, so rare. My eyes once dimmed now seek the skies, and slowly clearer visions rise. Because of you, I dare to see the world again, its grace, its plea. Your compassion's flame will not just stay with me alone. It lights the way for others wandering through despair to feel the warmth of selfless care. You've shown what love in action means, in quiet ways through giving scenes. You've built a bridge from soul to soul and made the broken feel more whole. So let this thanks rise like a song, a melody both soft and strong. May your example gently call more hearts to rise to give. To fall into the joy of lifting pain, of planting hope where none remains. Your kindness walks beside me still, a light, a love, a living will.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to show your support.